All right. Good evening and welcome. You are watching the Zone Blitz, the weekly webcast produced by NFL Female. By the way, be sure to check on our new updated website, www.nflfemale.com. Thanks for tuning in. The Zone Blitz comes to you every Tuesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, via Google Plus or YouTube if you're watching us live on YouTube as well. I am Sharona. I am the official Titans fan reporter for NFL Female. You can find me on Twitter at Sports by Sharona. I am joined, as always, with my co-host, Sonja. Sonja, thanks for all the help that you've given me over the course of the past couple of weeks. It's been kind of rough for Sharona here lately, and my girl Sonja has really stepped in and helped pick up some of the slack, so I really appreciate her.
Oh, why, thank you. You just call me Peggy Olson because I got it, boo.
You did. You did. We're also joined by one of my favorite people in the world, Joe Casale, who is an attorney. We won't hold that against him. He's a former NFL agent. He's an all-around great guy, great follow on Twitter. Joe, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, ladies. Great to be here.
All
right. Yeah. So, For those who are watching who aren't familiar with you, you're an attorney. You are a former agent. What are you doing with your time these days?
These days, I'm doing more of my consulting work, more media consulting. Excuse me, and also working with clients who are looking into new sports ventures. Excuse me. So pretty much staying in the sports and media end of it, which I've been in pretty much my entire career. And doing it more as on the media side of it now with a lot more commentary, a lot more writing, kind of turned into the dark side of the side of it now.
We're going to talk about your latest article. Joe wrote a fantastic article for my website on D. Smith. We're going to talk about D. Smith, maybe touch upon a little of the issues that Joe talked about in that. We were also fortunate to get him on our radio show, the radio show that I do with Vashti Hurt, 7:30 Yahoo Sports. But, you know, it's interesting times in the NFL. This is a show that we're going to devote a little bit to some of those legal topics. Sort of two primary legal topics. If you're watching out there and you know me, you know that I have a legal background. And so these issues are fascinating to me. I enjoy talking about them, even though I wouldn't necessarily want to get involved and litigate them anymore. But all right, so Joe's giving me his little frog in the throat. I'm going to be coughing now too.
Keep it away from me.
Before we turn to the legal stuff, Joe, I follow you on Instagram. You tweet out the most wonderful looking dishes. Your email has the word chef in it. Do you fancy yourself a little bit of a chef?
Well, more of a hobby chef, more of a home cook, kind of self-taught. Have a lot of friends.
That's the best kind.
Yeah, seriously.
A lot of friends in my favorite city in the world, New Orleans, who are in the restaurant business, who give me a lot of tips and kind of keep me on the straight and narrow. So it's just it's kind of a passionate hobby, something that kind of grew out of kind of a sad situation of cooking for my mother when she was ill with cancer. It was the only food that she could eat was the stuff I cooked, and then the way I got into it more and more as more of a kind of a passionate hobby chef, and just kind of grew from there. And now I'm, cooking for my neighbors, cooking for family and friends, just kind of just having some fun with it. And it's great because being Italian, we enjoy entertaining. So to entertain at home and hang out and have a good time and share a good meal and good wine, it's a fun thing to do.
I did remember that you're Italian. I am drinking some vino in your honor. So I had actually really scaled back. I wasn't drinking wine through the week, but I was like, I'm going to have some wine when we talk to Joe. If you're going to talk about legal issues, it's always nice to do it over a cocktail.
And I've been a good boy. I didn't have a Sambuca shot because I didn't want that Google headline to be, Sambuca-induced lawyer goes on Roger Goodell rant. So I wanted to try to keep that out of the resume this week.
You know what? Too late. It's a done deal because I like it, and I'm definitely gonna have to use that now. No, we wouldn't do that to you. Definitely wouldn't do that to you. I fancy myself a bit of a chef. I sense that Joe and I need to have some sort of chef off.
There you go.
That would be fun. I'll at least judge it because you don't want me to cook.
We have to make this happen. Joe, what is your signature dish?
That's a good question. Probably 3. I would say my ossobuco is one. My rigatoni amatriciana, which is a spicy red sauce with pancetta, and my tiramisu. My tiramisu is kind of my signature dessert.
All right.
Last year I made 14 strawberry tiramisus during the Rangers' run to the Stanley Cup, and they were 10-4 with them. So that became the good luck hockey dessert that I had to make during the Stanley Cup last year.
Well, what have you been making for your Saints this year? Because they're kind of sucking it up.
Well, really. Whatever I've been making, that's all out the window given the way the season's going. So those have been torn out of the personal cookbook. And
interesting times in the NFC South this year.
Yes, there are. There are.
I think no, there he is.
Okay. So
I think we've lost Joe.
I think all of the division at 7-9.
There he goes.
You got me back? Yeah, everybody lost. Seattle won a division at 7-9 a few years ago. Nobody uttered a word. Sometimes this stuff happens in the NFL. Nobody needs to overreact to it and start talking about, changing the divisions and changing everything. It happens. It's one of those, outliers, and you deal with it, and that's it.
Yeah, I have actually been talking about. I think that I'm respectfully. Can't get into this too much, but I respectfully disagree with you, Joe. I think playoff seeding needs to be changed. I think it needs to be reworked. I think that if it would be a terrible thing for a 5-11 NFC South team to force an 8-3 or an 8-9-10 win team to have to travel to them to play a playoff game. I think that there should be play-ins and all this other kind of stuff. We're going to have you back on to talk about this because this is a fascinating topic. Fascinating topic. But all right, we've got other things to talk about, so let's go ahead and turn to that nasty legal stuff. Big news, big event today as the NFL and the NFLPA were allegedly scheduled to sit down and meet over the ongoing discussions about updating the domestic violence portion excuse me, of the domestic violence policy. Yes, I know if you're watching out there, I don't like that word, but I use it because that's what everybody uses to identify it. I have not had a chance to see whether there have been any news. Joe, have you seen anything? Have we learned or heard anything about what happened at that meeting?
I haven't got anything that's gone public from the meeting today. In essence, the meeting was the union gave the NFL a proposal 3 weeks ago involving changes to the personal conduct policy. They were looking to reopen the collective bargaining agreement on this particular issue alone, and they were awaiting an NFL response to their proposal, which I suspect the NFL is going to say they're not interested in reopening the collective bargaining agreement. And that in and of itself is a problem because, as I've written about extensively on this subject, the idea this document is a document that does not need to be ever reopened is really a falsehood in labor law.
Because it's happened before.
Sure,
Mm-hmm.
collective bargaining agreements in sports and in labor in general are always reopened because circumstances change.
Yeah.
It becomes a narrow issue. You don't reopen the entire agreement. What you do is you say, listen, we're going to reopen it on this particular issue and collectively bargain. Now, clearly the NFL does not want to do that, despite Roger Goodell in his Ray Rice mea culpa press conference saying everything is on the table.
Right.
Clearly table because he has no interest in negotiating on this issue. And that creates a whole set of problems because basically there'll be no changes over a system that has clearly been.
Yeah, Joe, I want to ask. Joe, I want to ask you before we really get into the meat and potatoes of that, how much leverage does the NFLPA have in these negotiations? And did D. Smith, in your opinion, did D. Smith fail the players by not getting an independent arbiter to hear these issues of discipline when they redid the CBA back in 2011?
Well, I think that they have limited leverage. But there is leverage just the same because there are things that the NFL wants to do. They want to expand. They want to go to London. They want to do all of those things.
They want to add games.
Yes, they want to add games.
And all of that has
I think Joe's got a little bit of a spotty internet connection with us.
Oh.
Hey, Joe? Yeah, there he goes.
Lost him.
Yeah. We're going to get Joe back in here. A little bit of a spotty internet connection with him. That's what you get for living in South Florida, Joe. Let me send Joe the link again. Okay. And then Sonja and I will talk a little bit more about this. Yeah, because we've got a lot to say on the subject.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's just, I think the biggest thing is going back and opening up, and just that part, just to amend, everything that has happened, and just in regards to everything that's happened in the past 4 or 5 months, and just going back and looking at it and making some changes. And I know it's hard to renegotiate the entire thing, but they don't have to renegotiate the entire thing. They just have to look at that little bit.
They don't, and it's really I'm curious to get Joe to weigh in on this. To me, it is really it's a problem for the NFLPA and for the players if the NFL unilaterally makes changes to that CBA. It's got, in my mind, in my opinion, it has to be collectively bargained.
Right, it should be.
And it does not need to be the NFL going, this is what we're going to do, sign off on it. No.
You can't do that.
You can't do that either.
Coming from a labor state, you cannot do that with, all the auto workers and stuff like that. They just can't, your boss just can't come in and just change things willy-nilly. You got to bargain it.
I think it could end up being a bigger issue than what people think, which is why I wanted to do this. And you saw it. It's already started to percolate with the Adrian Peterson situation and how that went down and how that was handled. And I don't necessarily think that is over. The league agreed to somewhat independent arbiter in Ray Rice.
Yes.
They were forced to do it there because Roger Goodell had to testify. Mm-hmm. And obviously he can't testify and
make the decisions.
Make the decision. And I think that when you really, when you consider that and you stop and think about it, it's kind of a big issue. It's a huge issue that the same person has heard the misconduct cases and then the players are forced to appeal right back to, that same person. And you've seen some kind of farce things. You saw a little bit of a farce go down, in my opinion, with the Ben Roethlisberger thing. With there was another one where suspension was rendered, and then on appeal,
yeah.
They did they modified it a little bit, but it was clear that it was all just a setup to try to appease the masses.
Yes, exactly.
So yeah, I'm very curious to see how this ends up, going down. Sonja, what did you think? Should Adrian Peterson have been reinstated, in your opinion?
Honestly, I think he probably should have, just because, this was the original, the original thing said you'll be suspended until we can figure out, what the legal system says. The legal system, said, okay, not guilty, or not guilty, but, you know what they said. I can't remember.
Reduced charge. Yeah, he pled to a reduced charge.
Yeah, he pled to a reduced charge.
But it was resolved. Yeah,
Exactly.
They were waiting on a resolution.
It got resolved, so now let's just go ahead. He's, served his time. The NFL kind of, really hasn't said too much, and I think that going back and punishing him because, it was kind of a hasty decision, if you will, kind of like they got caught up in the heat of the moment, and now they're kind of, coming down off of this and saying, okay, let's, now we should really punish him again. I think that's kind of double jeopardy. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And in a way, if this is what, the original suspension was, live up to it and then go from there. I don't think the second punishment is kind of fair, at least in my opinion. Not that I'm condoning anything that he did or anything like that.
No. And I've said this repeatedly. You have to separate your emotional, your visceral response to what Adrian Peterson was alleged to have done, to the photographs, to how you would feel if it was your child,
Mm-hmm.
and focus on the fairness,
the letter of the law, yeah, and the fairness
of what went down. And I think that what got a lot of people all twisted up was the fact that he was able to retain his salary. He went on the exempt list, being
Mm-hmm.
paid, and I think Greg Hardy is in that same situation.
Yeah, I think so, because they didn't dismiss his case, but they're just holding off till after the season, correct? And
yeah,
he's
it's
still
been scheduled for after. Yeah, he's had one adjudication. It was in what we would call general sessions court, which is small court. And he's got the right to appeal that up to a larger court where there's a jury, and
mm-hmm.
And it is definitely a little bit of a different framework to have to deal with. But still, we don't hear much about Greg Hardy anymore.
No, you don't. He's
kind of gotten lost in all the Ray Rice, Adrian Peterson thing.
Mm-hmm.
So. Yeah, kind of interesting. I agree with you. I think that the NFL should have reinstated Adrian Peterson. If they were able to work out that deal, they could have worked out a deal where, maybe he wasn't willing to do this. Maybe he was like, "No, I'm going to keep my money and go take my ball and go home." Which, if that's what he wants to do, that's perfectly fine.
Right.
But I thought that he could have paid a fine, and it could have been like giving back some of the money, and so it would have been there would have been that situation. But I don't know. I don't think that is I don't think that it's necessarily over. I think Joe sent me a message. Let me see here.
Oh, okay.
No. Yeah, he's working on getting back in. We'll get Joe back in here.
Because it wouldn't be our show without some
it would not. Absolutely not be. It's always an adventure with we actually managed to come live, though, Sonja, without...
giggling.
We weren't really giggling very much.
No, we made some faces, but we did good.
Yeah, definitely. All right, we're going to resume our legal talk when Joe gets back in here, and I feel relatively certain it'll be in a few minutes. I've got to ask Sonja, though, while we're waiting. You know what I'm getting ready to ask you, Sonja?
What?
Mr. Dominic Gayala.
My man. Can
Did
he
I
just
pronounce
retire?
it right? Did I pronounce his name right?
Who cares?
That's it right.
Yes, Dominic Raiola.
Now, speaking of discipline and consistency and Roger Goodell, what in the world? He didn't get fined or anything for that mess.
Didn't get fined or anything. NFL's not going to fine him. Nobody's going to suspend him. The team's not even going to fine him. And, you know, this is the thing. He has done a lot of little cheap shot, chippy.
He has.
A lot.
He's a douchebag.
He is. He's a flat-out douchebag. Can't stand him. Can't stand him. I just can't stand him. I'm ready for him.
I don't know any Lions fan that likes him.
They don't. And you know what? Our good friend Bo, speaking on sports, said something and said, you know, I love how the media usually tries to twist him into being a leader. And it's like, no, he is not a leader. This is not what a leader does. A leader doesn't turn around and flick off, you know, the band at a football game. Bad. You know, he doesn't flip off the fans at a football game. Seriously. You know, and cheap shots like this, he's lucky that the player didn't get hurt. Bottom line, because then I think
really is.
He really is, because I think that should have shown, you know, how much of a douche he is. But,
and I'm going to tell you right now, and it may not happen, but you mark my words, it would not surprise me at all if somebody didn't go after him.
Oh, gosh, no.
And if he doesn't pay, and this is what Roger Goodell has brought us to, this kind of, you know, when he doesn't do his damn job the right way, then it leads to situations where the people look at the NFL and they look at the league and they're like, there's no consistency. We got to take matters into our own hands because we cannot trust them.
Right, exactly. And then, you know, how are you going to, like you said, fine people for making hits, plays away from, you know,
wearing the wrong headphones.
Exactly. When my man is going after somebody's knees, low hitting, and could possibly take somebody out for the season over something stupid. Just stupid.
You know, right before that, he had punched, I forget the player's name, but he had punched another player in the head.
Oh, my God.
How in the world did this guy not get something?
And that's the question of the day. I don't understand. I mean, Jim Caldwell, God bless him, has run a pretty tight ship, and how this doesn't get any sort of attention, I'll never know. And maybe he did pull him aside somewhere along the line and be like, look, you got to cool it. And I really hope he did, because this is unacceptable. It's unacceptable. You know, we're trying to turn things around here in Detroit, make things a little bit better, and consistent.
Caldwell, he just looks like he's fed up, you know?
He does. And he should be. You know what I'm saying? Because this type of behavior can't go on. And it has gone on. And it's been, you know, turned aside, looked away, all that good stuff. Nobody says two words.
What do you think the league should have done to him?
And at least fined him. At least, you know, what, 10,000, 5,000, somewhere in there. I think they should have at least fined him.
There should have been a one-game suspension. I do.
At least, yeah.
I think there should have been a one-game suspension and maybe a fine. I don't know. But he definitely should have receive some sort of punishment. I'm really disappointed that the league failed its responsibilities there, and I think that it's a sad state. By chance did you get an opportunity to see the faux press conference that Richard Sherman and Doug Baldwin did?
No, I did not.
God.
I think I saw a little picture of it on Twitter, but I didn't get a chance to see it.
You have absolutely got to check that out.
Okay, as soon as we're done here, I'm going to check that out.
It's pretty funny. If you haven't had a chance, I'm going to laugh. If you haven't had a chance to see that, of course, Marshawn Lynch, infamously, however you want to put it, does not like the media. And bless his heart, it's hard to blame him because everything he does I mean, you know, when he does talk to them, his words get taken out of context and used to create an inflammatory story. And so, you know, he didn't talk at the Super Bowl last year and was fine. And then, of course, he didn't talk again this year, and they made him pay the last fine plus another one. So he was out $100,000 in fines.
Poor guy.
Yeah, I know, right? So, Richard Sherman and Doug Baldwin did this kind of pretend press conference where Richard Sherman was up there at the podium. There was a cutout of Doug Baldwin, and he's back in behind there talking behind the cardboard thing, and they're basically making fun of the whole situation and the whole player safety thing and all that. It's just pretty funny. You should definitely check it out if you haven't had an opportunity to do so. So yeah, you know, it's kind of curious that we've got all these issues percolating around, all this legal stuff going on, and then, you know, the NFL and Roger Goodell, they just can't get right. They can't get right.
Can't get right. No, they can't, and it's gonna blow up in their face one day.
It really is. I don't know how Roger Goodell still has a job. I don't.
I was really surprised that he survived the whole Ray Rice thing. I really am surprised that he survived that. And it's just, you know, just the arrogance I think that he's got about the whole situation. It's ridiculous now. And so, you know, I'm sure he's probably thinking like, I'm Teflon commissioner. They can't get me.
Yeah, probably. Probably. What do you think, Sonja? I know he just sent me another message. He's trying to get back in here. The whole zero tolerance thing, we've kind of talked about that a little bit. Do you think that it is workable to do that? You know, they're doing it in college, and, you know, I've had issues with my alma mater, the University of Tennessee, regarding their groupiness getting in bed with Little John. But when they had two players who were accused of rape, they immediately suspended them, just like Florida did with Trayon Harris. And so, you know, you're seeing it sort of work in college. Could the NFL make something like that work?
I think they could. I think, once again, though, that they would really have to sit down, NFLPA and the commissioner, and really sit down and work something out. Is it going to be hard to do? It's going to be hard, but I think that they potentially could do something like that. And once again, coming back to college, I know it hasn't been the greatest thing, at least at my school, and you know about my friend Taylor Lawand and your friends. But I think, you know, I want to say Michigan did kind of learn from that, and, you know, they do, I'm not even going to lie, and, you know, my friends can get on me if you want to, but they do kind of have a tendency to kind of sweep things under the rug, and I'm not 100% sure why. And then this past week, one of their defensive ends, Frank Clark, got sent home, just got kicked off the team for domestic violence. So I think, you know, that is good. That's what you have to do. I mean, and it's probably a little bit easier to get college kids' attention than it is professional athletes' attention. But coming up with something like a zero tolerance, I think, can be done. It's going to be hard, but it could be done.
Yeah, you know, I think for Michigan it was almost a no-brainer situation because they are still under investigation for Title IX for their handling of the incident that Taylor Wan got involved in. And if you're not familiar, allegedly there was Taylor Wan's roommate at Michigan raped someone, and when she reported it, Taylor Lewan threatened her with rape if she did not shut the freak up, basically. Nice thing to do, right?
Any sweet.
Such a nice young man. So yes, didn't seem to affect his stock with the Titans, but anyway.
No,
so moving on. Yeah, you know, it's kind of I have mixed emotions about the whole zero tolerance thing. I definitely think that it's workable, and I think that the league can come up with a framework that allows it to be workable. But I know that they're going to face a lot of opposition for it because, unfortunately, despite progress in a lot of ways, we still live in an environment where when a female accuses a professional athlete of wrongdoing, the automatic reaction is to think that she is lying.
Right. And that
she's trying to get up, or get money, or whatever, what have you. It's there's that's that automatic reaction, and so I'm curious to see how. And I haven't really seen whether the NFLPA has weighed in on the whole. They've been kind of non-committal about the whole process.
They have been, yeah.
Basically, all they've been saying is, well, we're going to make sure that the process and everything does not violate the rights of the players, and they should. And I'm not knocking them. I'm just saying that they have not really weighed in very much on what they think specifically. I think we got Joe back.
I think so.
Hey, Joe.
Looks like we're back. Sorry for the technical problems on this one.
He had to go cook his dinner real quick. What'd you cook?
Exactly.
I wish.
No tiramisu?
No, not till tomorrow.
All right. Well, we expect our tiramisu tomorrow then.
There you go.
You guys, we're going to get back into the legal stuff. I have to tell you, because I'm going to be covering the games Thursday. I'm not going to get to go home like I usually do. This is 2 years in a row. So I bought my turkey and all the stuffing makings and all that stuff. And so 2 years in a row I'm going to be cooking turkey and doing all the fixings, and I'm kind of excited about that.
Oh, yummy.
Yeah. I got to go out tomorrow and get the right bottle of wine. They have to get Joe's recommendation on that. So I don't think I had a glass of wine last year. All right, anyway, Joe, we were talking about the zero tolerance policy. And do you think that, first of all, how do you feel about a zero tolerance policy toward criminal complaints of domestic violence or sexual misconduct against players? Is it workable? Could the league design some sort of framework for that?
No, I think zero tolerance is a failure. I mean, it doesn't work in the legal system. It won't work in football. I mean, you can create a coherent policy that both sides could live with, but that has to be collectively bargained. Zero tolerance never works because things happen. What if somebody's wrongly accused? What if you turn out that you throw somebody out of the league and a year later you find out that the information that you received to throw the person out of the league, just like we see in the legal system, people are wrongly imprisoned all the time. So what you really need is a policy that isn't designed to win the news cycle for the day. And unfortunately, the NFL's current policy is all about winning the news cycle because there's no logic to it. And until that can have a coherent and transparent policy, you're always going to have these kind of willy-nilly decisions. You had it in Bountygate. You had it with the Rice case. You're having it with the Peterson case. I mean, what is punishment? You put somebody on the exempt list and you pay them. People say, well, that's not punishment. But the person could not work. He could not go to his place of employment. He could not train there. He could not sit in meetings. He could not get treatment. He could not play in the games. That is being out of work. That is a form of punishment. Who designed the punishment? Well, I've been around the NFL 30 years. I never knew that list existed. I can tell you Rusty Harden didn't know the list existed, which means the NFL fashioned the decision to do that. That is a form of punishment.
Yes.
So now the case gets determined, and it's a misdemeanor case. However you feel about it, it was pled out as a misdemeanor. And if Mr. Peterson lives up to the terms set forth in the act, that arrest will be expunged from his record. So now the NFL comes back and says, well, there are extenuating circumstances. We're going to sit you out some more games. I see that as double jeopardy. The NFL sees that as something different. And this is what an arbitrator has to decide. My concern is that if double jeopardy becomes a standard for punishment in the NFL, that is an issue that the players need to really look at and consider just saying, you know what, we're not playing until this gets handled, because that will have unbelievably bad consequences across the board, and that just doesn't work. It's un-American. I mean, it just doesn't work. It's not going to solve what you're looking to solve.
Yeah, I think that Sonja and I were talking about how they're doing it in college, and they're not necessarily, well, in some cases they are, but in a lot of cases they're suspending them, and there's the opportunity. You know, with Treon Harris, obviously you saw it, and the complaint was withdrawn, and he returned back to school, and you know, really don't hear that much about it. I'm curious to see what they do end up doing, but I want to talk real quick, and we've only got a few more minutes with you, Joe. I want to
for a second is that colleges aren't represented by a union. So
well, not yet.
Athletes don't have, these athletes don't have any representation. So they are at the complete behest of the university in terms of disciplinary action. That's very tough.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about one of the big things to me, we sort of touched upon this, has always been the lack of documentation regarding the proceedings. And you know, right now the way things are done, Roger Goodell hears the misconduct, and then he is the person that they appeal to. I think people with a brain and a heart and understanding of the issues want to see that change, and there be an independent panel. What first of all, let's talk about how they might redo this and make it more palatable from that legal standpoint. You couldn't have a full-fledged trial would just be too much. It would be too time-consuming. It wouldn't allow for situations where the player might be suspended or what have you. The NFL uses arbitration for its appeals right now. Shouldn't they just go to a full arbitration proceeding, and that way there would have documentation and you would know exactly what transpired?
Well, ideally, an ideal system is to have an independent arbitrator handle all disciplinary cases. It should really not even be in the commissioner's domain. Now, I doubt very seriously Roger Goodell, who built his personal brand on being a law and order guy, is going to willingly give that up. If you look at the National Hockey League, the way the National Hockey League handles their discipline, they have a disciplinary czar, and he hears the cases. If there is an appeal, an arbitrator hears it. I would prefer, the NFL should have some kind of system like that where they take it off the commissioner's table, either have a disciplinary arbitration proceeding if there is a dispute, or just have a separate binding arbitration procedure to handle all disciplinary matters.
But they would still need an appeal panel, don't you think?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, but you can render, even if you had an independent arbitrator, you can present the case and both sides agree it's binding. It's kind of like each side has to give up something. If for instance, and this we're hypothetically speaking, if Goodell were to say, listen, I'll give up being judge, jury, and executioner for binding arbitration, but there's no other procedure. There's no appeal. There is binding arbitration, and that's it. Now the union has to determine, is it enough to get it off Goodell's plate, and we concede on that issue. That's what collective bargaining is. Each side has to give up a little something. The way it is right now, it's Roger Goodell saying, it's kind of like in the legal, if you remember the Lethal Weapon movies, when Mel Gibson was going after the rogue South African diplomat, and every time he thought he had him cornered, the diplomat would wave his paper and say, diplomatic immunity. Well, basically, have this agreement called the collective bargaining agreement, and it has 7 years, and you guys just have to deal with that. And my answer to that is, well, no, they don't, but it would take a real unified union to do something about it. And unfortunately, unified on this issue.
I think it begs the question: is Roger Goodell's credibility right now damaged so severely that the NFLPA can force him to give that up?
Well, that's a very good question, and that we're kind of having to see. He's done recently is kind of doubled down on the discipline. I mean, he's not just put the hammer down on Adrian Peterson. He has now decided that he is going to be a voice for change regarding child abuse in the NFL. Mm-hmm. Which I read that as you're using a 4-year-old kid's injuries to try to prop up your reputation. Mm-hmm. And the reason why I say that
absolutely.
Is mm-hmm. The NFL pays $1.3 million a year for lobbyists. Those lobbyists predominantly go to state legislatures to look for funding for stadium and facility improvements or new stadiums. If you are really serious about being the child abuse czar, then dispatch them to Austin and have them look to overturn the corporal punishment laws in Texas. Then you are becoming the child abuse czar, because
this is where I disagree with you. I don't think that they should be bound by the legalities of the situation. I think that it should be part of what they consider, but I absolutely do not think that they should be bound by the legalities of whatever happens in the underlying case.
See, one of the problems is when Goodell decides he's going to be out front on this issue, and that's great if that's the case, but there are laws he has to follow, and it's a very difficult thing to navigate, for instance, in the social media world, because if you were trying to discuss this, people automatically jump to the assumption you are approving of child abuse because you're defending Peterson, and that isn't the case. What is the case, though, is there has to be a policy. There just can't be. I mean, we saw video. Ray Rice is not the only guy who has ever had a domestic violence claim in the NFL, but there was video. The video, quote, was a game changer. Why should the video be a game changer? Domestic violence. Their video, the punishment, you already knew what happened. He told you what happened. So it's that bouncing around. Like if we didn't see we just read the testimony, and that's pretty chilling. I mean, and I would dare say, if there was a video of what Greg Hardy did, he wouldn't be sitting on the exempt list. He would just be suspended without pay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So one case was determined with a video, suspend the person without pay, he's out of the league. The other one, no video, a conviction that he's appealing, but he's being paid. This is a policy you're saying, what are you doing? I mean, where is the logic to all this? A policy that makes sense for everyone. So a player knows, hey, if I do A, B is going to happen. If I do B, C is going to happen. As it is now, it's a coin flip. It's, let me take the temperature of social media. Ooh, Adrian Peterson, bad. Let's pop him. It's not. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. It doesn't have logic attached to it. And it's going to be important for the union to frame their discussion with this publicly, that the public understands what they're doing, and don't leap to the conclusion of, oh, you'll just defend any of these, quote, rogue players. Its job is to defend everyone. And that's what a union person does. It isn't a popularity contest. You know, last week Michelle Roberts sent this shot across the bow, the new executive director of the NBA Players Association, when she said, I think salary caps are un-American. And all of these NBA writers went, what do you mean? How could you say that? Well, she's right. And she's trying to communicate that everything is negotiable. Nothing is, I'm not conceding anything. When I first started in this business, I was lucky enough to have lunch with Marvin Miller. I was the former head of the Major League Baseball Players Association, and as far as I'm concerned, is the most brilliant labor leader in the history of this country. And you sit down with that man for 2 hours and get an education on labor, and sports labor in particular, and you understand that you concede nothing. Every new collective bargaining negotiation is a blank page. You don't concede a salary cap. Now, you may end up not overturning it, but you may end up bargaining for other things in the deal, maybe more basketball-related revenues, whatever. But you concede nothing. Once you concede something, very hard to get it back. That was the message she was sending. And frankly, it was the most refreshing dialogue from a union leader in sports we've had in years.
Oh, I love her. I'm full on girl crushing on her. I think she's fantastic. She is a ball buster. The quote from, and I forget, maybe one of the Washington newspapers. Anyway, there was a profile of her, and this quote still sticks out in my mind. She said that her past is littered with the bones of men who underestimated her, and I love that.
That's awesome.
No, she's great, and that's the kind of leader you need to have as your union head. Now, my first thought when I read the story on her was, could you imagine if she represented the NFL Players Association?
Oh my God!
I would love it.
A completely different landscape.
Yes.
For the players. That's what's needed. And can D. Smith rise to that occasion? We're about to find out, because this is an important time for him.
I think that I'm not sure that the NFL is ready for a female to do that. I hope that we get there someday. I'm actually a little bit shocked. But you know what? She's got a smaller contingency to deal with in the NBA. Now, maybe bigger superstars, because, I mean, LeBron James is one of the biggest superstars in the world, right? But, yeah, we've talked to a couple of NFL players on our radio show about whether or not the NFL is ready, these players are ready to accept that. I think that they'll get there. I'm just not sure that I think Michelle Roberts is going to do a fantastic job, and that's going to help pave the way for others. So that's
I mean, as player, you always hear that football is the quote ultimate team game. It's the ultimate team game until there's labor talks, and then everybody splinters.
Yeah.
And until these guys understand that unity is how you gain advancement, you're always going to get the short end of the stick. And you just have to decide how much do you want to lose until you wake up and say, you know what, we've got to do things a little bit differently than we've done them in the past.
Yeah, but look, the NBA, the players have far greater power in the NBA than they do in the NFL. It's just
but even with that, look at the job Billy Hunter did for them.
Yeah.
Look at the job that Billy Hunter did to them in the last CBA. Those guys got destroyed. I mean, LeBron James should be a guy that makes $50 million a year. He's the biggest. I mean, why is his number capped? He's never be capped. LeBron James
the cap has never made any sense whatsoever to me.
Never.
The max contracts need to go away.
Exactly. There shouldn't be max contracts, and I think that's that Michelle is laying out, because she's saying, hey, you guys cried poverty in the last CBA. You just signed a $1 zillion television contract.
Right.
International sport. You're growing left and right. You can't run the policy. You can't rub the poor jive on us anymore. You got to come up with a new story, because we're not buying it.
Exactly.
And it's kind of like, that's something that you need as a union leader. And we just haven't had that in sports the last 10 or 15 years. We haven't had people that are willing to stand up and really fight for their players. It's more of a passive, let's all get along, kumbaya kind of thing, and that's not labor negotiations.
Well, I think you saw that much more with Gene toward the end of Gene Upshaw's tenure with the NFLPA. He was very buddy with those guys.
Correct. Never belong to the same country club as the person you're negotiating with across the table. It doesn't work. You've got to remember your roots. You represent players.
Yeah.
And if you lose that, it's hard to get it back because these guys didn't become billionaires being dumb. They are very, very smart, very, very powerful men.
Yeah. Are there any other looming legal issues that you see coming up on the horizon, Joe?
Well, I think the Rice case and the Peterson cases are very important because I think it's going to set the framework, as I said earlier about double jeopardy. If these men's penalties are upheld, then there's a pretty strong argument that double jeopardy is alive and well in the NFL. Of course, the NFL will deny that, but it will be pretty hard to argue otherwise. That's very I mean, this case especially because there's a real issue there of he received a 6-game suspension. Then Goodell said it became indefinite because of, quote, extenuating circumstances. Well,
the video.
if you kind of glean the testimony that took place, Ozzie Newsome backed up Ray Rice's claim that he told Goodell what happened.
Yeah, he sure did.
The distinction of closed hand, open hand, it is an indistinguishable distinction. It doesn't warrant him extending the penalty. In my view, an arbitrator may see it differently. Those are the things. That's a very important issue right now. And obviously the Peterson case, because it will give us some clarity of the double secret probation list, this exempt list, and is it really a punishment? Is it not a punishment?
Yeah.
And I think those are the two key cases right now that are going to shape things going forward, because I think, this is D. Smith's opportunity, lack of a better term, this situation and try to create something that's better for his membership. Or is it just is he just going to get stomped again? And that bears watching over the next month or so.
When is he up for re-election?
March, I believe, and Sean Gilbert is going to be running for.
Yes, he's coming after him.
Yeah, and that's going to be very interesting because I think all of this, is in that backdrop. I mean, how will the players see this? Players I've talked to in recent weeks, this has become a real hot-button issue for them. Not because they're domestic abusers or child abusers. They just want to know, what's this policy? I mean, what is this?
Right.
And they want clarity.
It's very smart of them to be aware of this.
Absolutely. Because, I mean, but the old saying, there but the grace of God goes I.
Yeah, exactly.
And you want to have some kind of clarity. If you have a policy that everyone understands what it is, you're not going to get a lot of pushback. Football players are used to taking orders. They're used to receiving orders. If you give them a plan, they're used to game plans. Here's the game plan. If you are arrested and convicted of domestic violence, you get 6 games. You do it a second time, you're out. Okay, now I know. Okay, as it is now, there is no policy. I hired a bunch of women to all of these executive positions, yet all of these so-called seminars that are being held, if you listen to what's going on, the NFLPA is not involved in any of them. Well, if they're not involved in any of them, to have the PR person of the Colts be given domestic violence lesson is the team. What about the players? What about the coaches?
I definitely think that they should be involved. I think that's important for that to happen.
But that's where the union has to come in. The union has to be involved in this. And if you listen to the union, they're saying haven't been. There's been one-sided thing. Again, each side is jockeying to try to get the high moral ground here, so you don't know who's telling you the entire truth or who's telling you the truth that shades to the favor. But clearly, there has not been a cooperative effort here on both parties to address this issue. And if you're going to get any kind of clarity at all, you gotta work together. Signed agreement or not, both sides need each other.
Joe, great stuff. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, tell everybody out there where Tell everybody out there where they can find you on social media, and we know they want to follow you on Instagram just to check out your wonderful dishes.
Okay. Instagram, it is Chef, Chef, Casale, Casale. And on Twitter, it is SportsJC16.
Now, you've got an article coming out. Has it been published officially yet?
Not yet. My Roger Goodell article. I'm trying to. We have to clear it with the lawyers to make sure I don't get sued.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll definitely post that. I had a chance to see it on Facebook. Good stuff. Thanks for joining us. We're going to have you back on here.
Thank you. Yes.
We're going to have you back on here real soon.
Evening.
And tomorrow we're coming for that tiramisu.
Yes.
There you go. Open invite.
Great.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Joe.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, Sonja. We don't have a lot of time. I know that you are aware of what's going on. I've kind of been discombobulated today about Ferguson. It really hurts my heart what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you want to talk about that at all, or do you want to just save that for another time, or?
We can talk a little bit about that. I will say that it was a weird dichotomy of feelings yesterday because I was sitting in Ford Field at the Bills-Jets game, which was very impressive, but, I'm sitting there, and then I'm looking down, they're like, oh, the verdict is coming, and the grand jury verdict is coming, and I'm like, oh, I don't know how I should feel right now, And so I see what's going on. I see people's reaction, and it's just like, I knew that was going to be the case. I knew, that there wasn't going to be an indictment or anything like that. I just kind of deep in my heart I knew. And then it's just like, well, what do I do now? Do I just, what now? It's just a sinking, weird, odd feeling.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about today. What now? What do we do? How do we fix this broken system that we have? I don't know what the answers are, but I know that we've got a problem, and if we don't solve it soon, I am fearful of what we're going to see in this country.
Right.
I really, really am. I think that, if we don't all come together, it's going to tear us apart.
Oh, for sure. Easily. It's going to tear us apart. And it's a human rights issue. You know what I'm saying? It's nothing more than that. When it comes right down to it, it's just a human rights issue. Somebody's child died. Somebody's child was not a saint, I know, but somebody's child died. And that cannot happen.
An unarmed teenager was shot and killed, and nothing was done about it. It's really, just really unfortunate. All right. Well, we're almost out of time. I definitely want to wish everyone out there a very happy Thanksgiving.
Yes, happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving. We're going to be back next week with a much lighter version of the show. We're going to have some fun next week. We're going to laugh and giggle like we usually do.
Of course.
But big shout out to Joe Casale for joining us tonight. Great stuff. We really appreciate him joining us. And we'll get David. We're supposed to have David Spellman join us as well, but he had an emergency arise, which we completely understand.
Mm-hmm.
So, it happens. So we'll get him in here as well. Next week we'll be talking about strictly football. We may do a hot topic. Who knows? But stay tuned in. We'll be back. Sonja, go ahead and tell everybody where they can find you.
Oh, cool. You guys can find me on Twitter at mom2, 3RN. You can always find me writing for NFL Female. I'm also a contributor to A Good Sports Hang. So make sure you check out everybody at NFL Female and also over at A Good Sports Hang. So that's where you can find me.
All right. You can find me on Twitter at Sports by Sharona. You can find me at NFL Female. And you can also find me writing at Pro Player Insiders, and obviously on the radio. We're going to be on hiatus until after the holidays. We'll definitely be back. And we'll be back next week with another great show. Be sure to get on www.nflfemale.com and check out all the latest and greatest articles that are being written by the wonderful women of NFL Female. Be sure to check out the podcast tomorrow night, Wednesday nights, with NFL Female. Shout out to Liz, as always. Have a very pleasant evening, and we'll see you next week.
Happy Thanksgiving. Bye.
Happy Thanksgiving. Gobble, gobble.
Gobble, gobble.